Good evening, everybody, pundits. It'll be good morning by the time you listen to it. Welcome to the Straight After the Match Gunners Town Pub podcast. Tonight, we actually have four of us in the bar, which is unusual. So welcome to Paul Hepker. Some of you will know as at Invinciblog, Kaya, Kayak, and Mike McDonald. So all four of us tonight are actually Gunners Town writers. So for the first time, I think, in the Gunners Town podcast, we are entirety of writers from our wonderful blog. So we won. It wasn't pretty. There's a lot of negatives to talk about, I'm sure. But let's start with the changes in structure. Changes in formation. Let's talk about the inclusion of Saka over Maitland-Niles, I think, and the inclusion of Ceballos over El Neni. Let's start with you, Mike. Were you surprised, or was that obvious to you?
It wasn't obvious to me. It was obvious to Paul, actually, on the midweek when we did our preview. He was the one that picked that one out. We were talking about how to get around their block, and I was chucking all kinds of suggestions out. And Paul made the great point of playing Saka, be it left back, left wing back, somewhere on the left, because, he's the one that's more offensively adept, I suppose, is a good word. More so maybe than Maitland-Niles, more of a natural, and he might find it easier to get around their deep block and in behind them. Didn't really get in behind them in that regard, but Saka was the difference maker, I thought, as well, throughout the game. He was the one, if something was going to happen, and it was very sporadic, but if something was going to happen, it was going to come from Saka, and it did. So good, kudos, Paul.
Indeed. Paul, what about Ceballos for El Neni? Was that obvious, Paul?
I thought Ceballos. I think we needed somebody like Ceballos just to break those lines. To put the through ball through, and it just wasn't the same kind of snappy Ceballos that I think we've seen of late. I think maybe it's just a sharpness from not starting and not playing as much. I felt that there were times when he looks like he's playing underwater. He looks a bit slow, but not as snappy as he can be. And his passes, I don't know, for me, generally, I find them quite kind of soft. I don't find he has like a particularly strong pass, and I think it's intercepted quite a few times.
A lack of zip.
A lack of zip and snap and crackle and pop.
So, Kaya, what did you think about Ceballos tonight? I agree with Paul. I thought he was off his game.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was quite harsh, actually, given how surprisingly amazing El Neni played against Liverpool in the Community Shield and Fulham last week, to see Ceballos come in for him. But I did get it. When you're playing teams like West Ham, who, no disrespect to them, are a lesser team and the kind of team you have to be beating at home if you want to be qualified for the Champions League, playing a back three and then two defensive-minded midfielders in El Neni and Xhaka might be a bit overkill. So I got the decision to play Ceballos as a slightly more offensive-minded presence in the middle of the park. But like Paul was saying, I didn't really think it was his best game tonight. And then, of course, to show us all, he provides the assist at the end to win the game.
Yeah, I thought, I think the difference, I was actually screaming for El Neni at one point because the pace of passing in the first half and the number of touches required by both Ceballos and Saka was extremely frustrating. And whether you like El Neni or not, last week it was one touch and released the ball. It's always quick release. It's never creative. He doesn't do that. He just keeps the momentum. And I thought that was lacking between Saka and Ceballos. Neither of them seemed to know who was going to be the deepest and who was going to be picking up, and they were alternating. And as a result, neither of them were as far advanced as we might have liked them to be. I think that would be a fair assessment. But it was interesting. So what about, I thought another bit talking point, and I don't think he did himself any favours when he came on. I mean, Willian looked sharp for me at the beginning, but faded quite dramatically. But Pepe, for me, did just absolutely nothing when he came on. You were hoping for a big impression. What did you think of Pepe's introduction and Willian generally, Kaya?
I mean, there was one instance when Pepe came on and we've been under the cosh for about 10, 15 minutes. West Ham were really pummeling us with these crosses. And then I can't remember exactly how the ball got to him on the counter-attack, but Pepe has a chance, one-on-one, I think it's up against either Cresswell or Masuaku, just to run down the line, get the ball up the pitch, and he dribbles the ball straight out of play. And when you see that as a defender, it's so frustrating. You're relying on these guys, Willian, Pepe, Aubameyang, Lacazette, the forward players, just to take the stress off the defence in those kind of situations. And Pepe, like you say, offered very little when he came on. I thought his set piece delivery, which is normally really good, was really poor. The corners didn't get past the first man. But that said, I didn't think Willian managed to reach the heights of his performance last week against Fulham when he was so fantastic and getting all those assists. I think West Ham did a really good job on just sitting so far deep that there was the gap between West Ham's midfield and their own back three was so small that there was no real spaces and pockets for Willian to pick up like he was doing in the Fulham game last week. So probably a night to forget for both of them, to be honest.
Yeah, Mike, I mean, tactically, I thought Willian wasn't staying out wide and was, as you've said, and I believe as well, I think long-term Willian wants to play through the middle or just behind the striker. I thought he was taking up a lot of good positions, but it doesn't seem to be working. And yet it seemed when Arteta gave Pepe instruction, Pepe was almost hugging the touchline for the last 15 minutes. So it seemed like it was almost like there was an instruction. I want you to try and do something different to what Willian was doing. Did you see it that way?
Yeah, I did, exactly. I saw Willian trying to play between the lines and it became too predictable. I've got a Chelsea mate who says that he's a highly frustrated player. No, I binned him. He lives in the shed out back. Don't worry, Dave. Years ago, he's back there. But occasionally I let him out and ask him a question. He told me that Willian is elite, potentially elite, and will frustrate you because he is elite, but yet he looks like he will have lazy performances every once in a while. And I think it's his body language as well. I don't know if it's lazy or just laid back. He comes across as being very laid back, but he was between the lines. And I think it was a combination of Xhaka and Ceballos that you very rightly said were taking too long to move the ball, meant that it was Willian on the right and Saka on the left who were tucked inside almost as a square, taking too long to give him the ball. That was problem one. And problem two was Willian didn't offer any variation. Aubameyang was offering variation, coming short, run behind, going wide left, in behind, coming short. Willian was coming short and never running behind. So I felt that he was just too easy to pick up, therefore almost anonymous. And then when Pepe comes on, well, Pepe is the king of making football look difficult. A guy who's an enigma. He's a fabulous talent, but everything he does in my head is too difficult. More difficult than it ever needs to be. Love to have a chance to coach him, but yeah. Anyway,
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the one thing, the last thing I wrote actually, and I got bored of writing, was, why is he never on the left? I simply, very, very simple. He's left-footed. I just want Aubameyang and Pepe or whoever it is to just switch flanks now and again. It happened for a brief time in the match when Willian was on the left and Aubameyang was on the right, probably from a corner, and it just stayed that way for a while. But I just simply don't understand why Pepe always has to play on the right. And if he's starting on the right, why can't we just have a bit of variation? Because he can beat a fullback, but he can't use his right foot. So what's the point of beating a fullback and then cutting back every time? That's what I don't get.
Yeah. And the easiest way, Dave, to beat a deep block, as we talked about midweek, is to go around the outside of it. And if you've got talented wingers, Willian never put himself in a position, Dave, where he was one-on-one with the player and to beat him on the outside, which is Willian's strength, which was a shame. And as you're right, if you had Willian on the right doing that, Pepe on the left, go around the block on the outside, and then you can cause havoc, cut in, and now you've got all kinds of options. Didn't happen, though.
No, it was very frustrating. I got a lot of stick for my I don't tweet during the game very often. I don't know if you saw it. I tweeted that I didn't think Gabriel was vaguely ready, and everyone's screaming at me because he's probably our best defender. What I didn't mean he's not ready to play for Arsenal. I just meant he wasn't ready to be the main man, and I thought he wasn't ready to play 90 minutes top level in the Premier League, and that was what he had to do today. He was under pressure all the time. It was definitely a penalty he gave away, no question. And there's been a couple of clumsy clearances, and I'm not saying he's not going to be a great player, but when you're playing alongside Kolasinac and Holding, you are going to have in the centre, you are going to have to be the main man. And I don't think he's ready to be a main man. So I don't know what you think, Paul, but I was quite relieved to see David Luiz fitting on the pitch at the end and looking, quite happy to be there. I just think Gabriel is not going to be the middle player in a 3 long term. I can't see that. What do you think, Paul?
I think it's worth. I agree with you completely. I think he had an astounding game, and I think what's amazing is looking at all the aspects that he has to it: his clearances, his blocking, his tackling, his shepherding people out. I mean, he's got a very well-rounded, and a strength and a presence. I don't know if you saw him kind of just throw that one guy over his shoulder as if he didn't exist. I mean, because we were being bullied, frankly, by their forwards. So it was great to see somebody who's got, has got a little bit of beef, that can stand up to it. But I think it's worth pointing out the fact that Tierney was injured in this.
Yeah.
So I think in Arteta's defence, I really don't think Kolasinac was anywhere in the equation, and the pressure that put on kind of Gabriel. Mikel has had a few games where he's had like really late injuries and had to make some kind of late last minute kind of adjustment. So in his defence, I think that might have been why things didn't kind of flow quite as well as they did. I don't know how much would have changed it. He would have changed it.
Yeah, I just had a question for you boys. Why did Kolasinac play? Why would you not play David Luiz in the centre, which is his favourite position, Gabriel to the left of him, which is his favourite position, and then you've gone and solved the problem? It seemed really odd that you'd keep Gabriel, as Dave said, who's a non-English speaking player and in a pressure situation, playing a home game in the centre, trying to organise, but he can't speak the language. As a youngster as well, that just seems really odd.
I know why he did it. Because Tierney and Maitland-Niles have been doing that overlapping, interchanging position. Gabriel can't do that. Gabriel isn't a ball playing, coming out, rushing forward, which is what Tierney's been doing. Maitland-Niles have been dropping in. They've been interchanging, and obviously that's why, I'm assuming, but it didn't work. What's intriguing me, I don't know what you think, Kaya, is I think most of us would have assumed, given pre-season games and how long he's been with the Arsenal camp, that Saliba would have been ahead of Gabriel. I mean, they both played and received plaudits in the same league. One's a little bit older, fair enough. One's Brazilian, one's French. But I thought Saliba would be ahead, and yet Saliba's not even getting a look in. He's not making the bench. I know he played for the under-23s last night. Any theories on why that might be? I know he wasn't an Arteta signing, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think that's largely just because of the lack of French football that there's been. Obviously, their league got cancelled in March and it never came back.
Yeah, but I think with Gabriel straight in the team.
Same with Gabriel, true. But I think the difference with Saliba is he had a lot of injuries last season. A lot of quite serious injuries last season that kept him out for, I think it was a grand total of 6 months altogether he missed, which Gabriel just didn't have to deal with as an issue. And you don't want to be rushing in this guy. Obviously, there's also a 3-year age gap between them. Saliba's still only 19, whereas Gabriel's a little bit more experienced at 22. On top of that, I think that, I don't know what you guys think, I wanted to maybe ask you about this, was the idea of, obviously, Maitland-Niles has played pretty much every position on the pitch, but the one position he's never played in has been centre-back. And obviously, Kolasinac, when he was going forward, is doing that overlapping full-back role. It was something that he really struggled with, particularly when he got into the final third. I wonder what you guys might think about maybe if Tierney's injury is going to be a long-term one and Kolasinac is on his way out the door, and we all agree that Gabriel can't do that role, what do we think about Maitland-Niles maybe filling in on that left side of central defence and overlapping in the way he was doing, in the way Tierney's been doing?
I'll tell you what you could do, rather than play him on his wrong foot still, just do that same thing, but do it on the right-hand side of the pitch and play Maitland-Niles on the right of a three, interchanging with Bellerin. That might work better than, pushing him on his wrong foot if he's going to play in that position.
I don't feel, as much as I admire Maitland-Niles' utility, I'm not sure that him being in one of those central back roles is, I don't know if he has he'd have to, severely restrict his game and his desire to move forward and stuff and hold that kind of back line. I'm just not sure it's something you'd want to ask of him. But
if you were playing Luiz in the centre, Gabriel on the left, and Maitland-Niles in what Tierney was playing, it's very free. The way they play it, it rotates. If Maitland-Niles went forward, it becomes a back four. The left side would switch over. But yeah, I don't think Arteta would try it.
Yeah, it was just.
Yeah, sorry. How much do you think Arteta was surprised by the way Moyes set up and played this game? Because I felt that they were adventurous. I think that they were really they had a lot of momentum. That they were quite direct. I think that ended up making Saka, when he was attacking, he suddenly had to be back in defence, and when he was in defence, he suddenly had to be in attack because their transition was so quick that I don't think he had the luxury of being, doing those two things. And I think a lot of was asked of him, and that's kind of why I think our attack and our defence kind of was a little weak, because he was a lot of the time is stuck in no man's land. And I think that was down to West Ham being as direct and kind of
they pressed very well, and I thought that was something that was noticeably lacking, from our game today. even particularly at the start, we came back into the game in the first half, but we let them start very well. And I thought that the press wasn't there from Arsenal today for some reason. It's been noticeably there a lot in packs. We did it in that period in the first half where we were doing well. We were forcing West Ham to play long a lot, Mike, I thought, but then we seemed to fade off that again and let them back into it.
Yeah, well, I thought that the big difference for me defensively was against Fulham. Gabriel was holding the line about 40 yards out when we were being attacked and holding it there. And we went back to backing off, the David Luiz disease, which led to their goal. And that was our mode today. And I didn't understand why we did that, because we weren't being... I'm talking about not just being counter-attacked, 3-on-3. I know you need to back off in that scenario because you don't have enough numbers. But anytime West Ham broke forward, we backed off to the top of our box. And we didn't do that against Fulham. It was really a really odd thing to do.
It must be the Lacatini then, mustn't it? Because maybe he's the communicator. Maybe he's the one who's constantly talking, perhaps. A bit more experience. What about these? Something that I wanted to talk about. I wrote down, and we're changing the subject completely. Thank you. I'm the host. I'm allowed to do that. There's something in our group chat when we were talking about the Leno Martinez dilemma, and we've all written about it, and people have talked about it, and the club's made a decision. One of the things that one of our other colleagues was that the reason why he wanted Martinez to stay was because Martinez is exemplary with his feet and Leno's nowhere near at that level. I particularly watched Leno from the first, and I thought he didn't put a single foot wrong with his feet today. And okay, we didn't score from those moves started from Leno as we had from Martinez, but I thought he was very, very good on the ground today. In fact, he was worse on, the punching was a bit, but I thought on the ground he was very, very good. Did you think that, Kai? I didn't do anything wrong for me playing out from defence today?
Well, I also noticed something quite interesting, particularly at the start of the second half, was how high Leno's position was. Obviously, there was that
commentators
corner where
picked up on it, didn't they? It was very,
yeah. It was a little bit scary seeing Leno in the centre circle heading the ball far forward into their half, but the way that he stayed there and was so far away from the goal, sort of doing I know German goalkeepers is quite a lazy comparison, but the Manuel Neuer role of just a sweeper keeper so much further up the pitch. And Leno is not bad with his feet. We have to remember when he first came into the team, the reason obviously Czech got injured, but the reason he was chosen was because he was better with his feet than Czech ever was. Obviously, Martinez may well just be a step above, but Leno's not a bad goalkeeper with his feet, and he can still be the kind of guy to start Arsenal attacks from deep. There wasn't any sort of trademark Arteta goal like we saw with the Aubameyang goals against Liverpool and against Fulham, but that's not going to happen every week. And I think as long as you've got someone who's capable with their feet and capable enough to start those attacks from deep, then I think we'll be fine in the goalkeeper position.
Yeah. Are we all comfortable with the club decision on Martinez?
Well, it is, isn't it? But I mean, for me, I guess there was no market for Leno because I do not understand two goalkeepers that are so close and level, and one's valued probably 25 to 30 million higher, is where I think Leno is a 45, 50 million goalkeeper. Why you don't sell the one that would make you enough to buy a midfield all on its own? But I guess, so aside from selling him to Chelsea or Manchester United, who in my opinion both need a goalkeeper, and you don't really want to have to do that, is there a market yet for Bernd Leno? Because Manuel Neuer at Munich, which I think is where he's going to end up long term, is back on his game. So I didn't, I guess I understood it, but I wish that Martinez was still here. If I'm being totally honest.
Paul?
Yeah, I feel like just looking at exactly what happened in the game, Leno was good with his feet, but there were 3 or 4 times when he came out to punch it. And there was one time when he toppled over, I think it was Gabriel, and landed on his head upside down, and the ball squirted out.
Ceballos backed into it.
Those were kind of moments that, we've always, when Emi was playing, we were boasting how safe his hands seemed and how everything just stuck to him. He caught it, he didn't punch it into danger. He just seemed to have more of a commanding ability to catch the ball in those kind of dangerous situations, and I couldn't help think about that when I saw this. But I've got to just trust that between Arteta and
I guess also we also have to recognise we're not playing with a settled back 2 or back 3 yet, whichever we end up with, it's not settled at the moment. The other thing I think everyone's forgotten, and I'll make a prediction for you, Emi Martinez won't be Aston Villa's #1 keeper by the second half of the season, because Tom Heaton is the best English goalkeeper in my opinion. Everyone's forgotten he's even at Aston Villa. He's just injured. And no one's even mentioned it. I think Tom Heaton's an exceptional goalkeeper. I think he should be England's goalkeeper, and everyone's forgotten about him just because he's out injured. So there's a prediction for you. We can revisit that in a few months' time when Tom Heaton's fit. The other thing I picked up on, I wrote down early on, and it's something that you pick up on because obviously there's no crowds. How noticeable for me, how much coaching Arteta was doing from the touchline, particularly in the first half when things weren't going well. I mean, he's literally coaching individual players. You could hear him call their names. Did you pick up on that, Mike?
Yeah, I think he's been doing it ever since the restart. And it's good. We talked about it again on the pod midweek and how that's advantageous to Arsenal right now to have no crowd because you've got a coach that, not just that he's coaching because all of them try, but one that the players actually listen to, you know.
Lost you for a second then, Mike.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry.
It's all right. Kai, what did you think? Did you pick up on that? You noticed that a lot?
Yeah, I mean, it's like Mike was saying, it's really something you can hear without the fans in the stadium. You can hear them. I mean, obviously the crowd noise is being faded in on the TV commentary, but you can hear him shout, Danny, 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 every 30 seconds. It's Danny, Danny, Danny. It's always the person who seems to get the brunt of it. I don't know if it's because in that first half on the right side of midfield, he's a little bit closer, but there's always someone, there's always, you know, he's such a modern manager, speaks French, Spanish.
But then, you see, I remember years ago, in fact, it was a game they referred to in the commentary when we lost the first game of the season to Billich's West Ham. And I was, where I sit, Paul knows where I sit, I'm like 4 rows from the pitch in my seat. And Billich was 10 yards from me most of the game. And he was literally, he was even coaching where the player should throw the throw in. And it was, when you see that on one side of the dugout and Wenger on the other side, who literally doesn't say a word for the whole game. And I'm not saying one's right or wrong, but for me, it was the difference on that day. And I remember tweeting about it and getting a lot of stick from people, just because he shouts a lot doesn't make him a good manager. It wasn't the shouting, it was the individual instructions to players and making tweaks. And you could actually, because I was so close, I could actually hear it. And I think that's what Arteta's like. I think he will tweak and make changes from the touchline during a game.
Yeah.
He's a very intense guy, isn't he? So that's what his mantra on the touchline is. He's always prowling up and down. He never sits still. Wenger had the ethos of, let the players do what they want, trust in the players, confidence in them. Arteta, I'm not saying he's not got the trust in any of the players, but his ethos is a lot more specific and he's a lot more demanding in what he wants from the players. So he's going to be shouting a lot more. I mean, to be expected.
Sorry, Paul.
There were a couple of moments, where the camera, when we were losing control, West Ham were pretty much on top of us for like most of the second half. And there was a cut back to Arteta and he looked noticeably worried on the sideline. And I think in that moment, I kind of thought, I hope that as Arsenal fans that we can, he's not the Messiah. It might feel like it, having delivered 2 trophies.
Well, he's just a very naughty boy.
A very naughty boy. No, I mean, I'm serious though. It's like, we're the type of, crowd that can rip somebody's head off when they make a mistake. And I just hope that, we let Arteta also find his feet in this, because it's a tough league. There have been some amazing additions to the league this year. I think the teams we're going to play are all going to give us a severe fright. I mean, look at what Palace did to United. Tottenham were overturned. There's going to be a lot of upsets, and I just hope that we're ready for one of those maybe happening to us, and how we react to that is going to be really important.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously we've got a big test next week. We've got I was going to nice long rest because we don't know what sort of team he'll play against Leicester midweek. But certainly Premier League wise, we don't play till a week on Monday. But that's a big test. If we've got 9 points after the first 3 games, I think we'll all be very, very happy. Long term though, we've got a few more weeks. We've got 3 weeks, is it, of the transfer window? And everyone's obviously debating which is more of a priority, whether it's Aouar misses or whether it's Thomas Partey. Based on what you saw today, where we weren't playing well and we were struggling to break down, a low block and a very organised defence. Let's go round so we'll start with Mike. Who's the priority if we're signing one based on what you saw today? Is it Partey? Is it Aouar?
I think we'll get both. But I will say that
I didn't ask you that.
I know. Sorry, cheeky there. If I could only get one Christmas present and not 2, Dave, I would go for Thomas Partey because I think his game is more rounded. He's got the physicality, the positional sense, the work ethic, having played for Simeone, and he's got the ball progression, which Aouar has got. So that's what I would do. But I think there's a great need for both. I thought that game just stunk of somebody needing to take the initiative. And I feel like Aouar is somebody that takes the initiative and drives at players and can handle tight spaces and such. So sort of how I wish Willian would have been for us today, but he seemed to just fade into the background. So and maybe I'm answering the question there in short, because of Willian, him being technically a very similar player. If you wanted to play a 4-3-3, you could play Willian and get a similar product to Aouar in the midfield. So Thomas Partey would bring that physicality and discipline. So yeah, Thomas Partey.
Kaya?
I have to echo Mike. I mean, tonight he's an easy target, but I thought Granit Xhaka had a really poor game. I thought his passing was quite off, and I thought he was quite weak in a few of the tackles. And I think we do miss someone who is, like Mike was saying, a very physical presence in the middle of the park, and someone who can just carry the ball forward away from defence. In times when we're really under the cosh, someone who can just sort of get the ball out of there, away from the back four, and just protect us a bit more is what we need, particularly against teams that are a lot more direct and are going to put us under the cosh in ways that we're not comfortable with, like West Ham. Honestly, I think Aouar is obviously a player we need in terms of a creative spark in the midfield, but something we definitely need from midfield, and it's a controversial opinion because obviously everyone's got their heart set on Aouar now because the headline seems to have decided that he's moving to Arsenal and that seems imminent. But I think that we need, in terms of a creative player and a more offensively minded midfielder, we need more goals from the midfield. Obviously, last season we only got one. The top scorer or joint top scorer was, Willock, Ceballos, Saka. Between them all got one. I think Herrera got one as well. Our goal scoring record isn't great with Leon, and I think Partey is definitely the priority. I just don't know if Aouar is specifically what we need. I don't know if he's offering that much different from what we've got right now.
Paul?
I was just going to mention that I think we need goals, and as much as Thomas Partey is a kind of player that you can build a team around, I think there's sacrifices that would be made there and players that are kind of, I don't know, if I had to choose one, I mean, I'd rather have both, but I think right now I would probably choose Aouar.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with the other two. To be honest, I would go Partey all day. I mean, we haven't had a player like that since Vieira, and it would be a game changer for us. Someone who's going to pick the game up by the scruff of the neck when it's not going well like today and make things change. And the follow-on question for me, at the end of last season, I thought Ceballos and Saka did very, very well together. But I've never at any point felt this is a long-term solution for Arsenal Football Club. Play whether it's in 4-2-3-1 or the current formation, those two together in central midfield is 2-1 pace for me, and that's never going to change. There's nothing either of them can do that's going to change my opinion. And I like them both as individual players, but for me, whether it's 4-3-3 this season, or whether it's 4-2-3-1, or whether it's what we're doing now, one of those should play and not both in every game. Everyone agree?
Which one, Dave?
Well, I would alternate it depending on who we're playing, But if it was my choice right now, I would probably go to Ceballos and Partey as and have Xhaka as first change. I do happen to know that Arteta is very taken with Mohamed El-Neni in training, though. So that's why people I think are doubting the Partey thing now, and everyone's throwing all their eggs in the Aouar basket. I'm just still convinced Partey's coming, and I'm not convinced that Aouar is. But we'll see. Anyway, we're running short of time. One question. I mean, I'm not going to ask for predictions because there'll be other pods for the Liverpool game. But how much of a team do we put out against Leicester, and how important is this to us or to you individually? So I'll start with Kai. Do we go half and half? Do we go a whole second team, or do we go full guns blazing? Given that we've got until next Monday. Kaya? Okay, Paul?
I think that...
Kaya's back.
Sorry. Yeah, I just cut out for a little second.
No. Kaya, come back in a minute. Paul, what would you do against Leicester? We don't actually know what day, but I think it's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday.
I think Arteta needs to, give the second string an opportunity to shine. I'd say not quite half, maybe, half would be pretty good. I think bring 5 youngsters and, give them a good run. And some of the second string starters, I'd put them on, the older guys.
Mike, what would you do against Leicester?
Same as Paul, I would do half and half. David Luiz hasn't really played yet, so put him in the middle and let him organise. Place Saliba to his right, give him an opportunity, see what he looks like. You've got not many options in the midfield right now, unless we sign somebody quickly on Monday, Tuesday. Very interesting to see what happens with the Guendouzi situation, because it looks like Torreira is not getting in the squad because he's living. Guendouzi isn't as at the door as Torreira right now. So just because we need somebody to play midfield, I wonder if Guendouzi gets a look.
Well, he called Willock onto the bench instead ahead of Guendouzi today, didn't he?
He did. So you could do El Neni and Willock and do something like that. And then up front, Nketiah instead of Lacazette is sort of which one's going to start each week. I don't think that matters. Pepe would need a run out. So if you had Pepe here, figuring this out, go Nelson, and that was your front three. That's a pretty darn good front three for a Carabao Cup game. And then you've got El Neni and Willock, and then you've got Maitland-Niles, who didn't play today. Maybe you try him. I'd love to see him try and play his natural side, play as a right wing back, and then you've got Saliba, Luiz, and I'm not sure because Collison actually supposed to be leaving and Tierney's injured, but something looking like that, yeah.
Kaya, are you back?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. I think that the game against Leicester is really important for the future of a lot of those young guys who we've been speaking about just there. So I think if we go out in the Carabao Cup, there's not much point in keeping your Smith Rowe is injured, he won't play, but your Reece Nelsons, your Joe Willock, there's not much point in keeping them around. It's better to send them out alone and give them a bit of game time. But if we do then stay in the competition, then keep them around by all means and have them training with Arteta and have them learning under him and fitting into the system and playing in those cup games.
Is Emil Smith Rowe not fit at the moment? Is Smith Rowe fit?
He's got an injury. He's out for 2 more weeks, I think they were saying before the game. So he's a little while off still.
Interesting. Right. Anything else I should have asked you guys? Anything else you quickly want to say at the end? We got away with it. We got away with it.
Yeah, hope Tierney's not out for too long.
They had 73 minutes. They put out the stat that they'd had 8 attempts and we'd had 1 in the second half at home.
Yeah.
Not good.
I will say, Dave, I've never seen in recent times West Ham play that well. If you watch that game back, which I haven't yet, I can't even remember what West Ham giving the ball away in the entire game cheaply. And normally West Ham just gift people opportunities to score. So I think all of this Arsenal talk for the last 35 minutes is all good and great, but sometimes you have to give a little round of applause for the other team who really, really played well. And they must be really unhappy they didn't get something out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realise that Fellaini had his hair shaved off and changed his name to Susek, for example. I didn't know that. Did you know that?
I did not.
On that note, thanks everyone. And I'm sure we'll see you all again soon. And hopefully everyone will enjoy this chat tomorrow when the pod comes out. Thank you.
That'll be awesome. Bye.